American West Coast, California, Silicon Valley. Between flower power and anti-war protests, the dream of hippies, nerds, and businessmen is realized here in the 70s. A small personal computer for your home. Personal computers for everyone, not just a few corporations and the government. The PC as a tool of liberation against Big Brother. In 1975, the first home computer comes onto the market and electrifies hobbyists and flower children alike. Only 2 years later, half the tech community is heading to the first computer trade fair in San Francisco.
My idea of a computer fair was we would go dressed as geeks and not as business people and have a really enjoyable time. I was hippie bearded. And if some people wanted to set up card tables outside and show off their products, that's fine.
The personal computer is slowly growing up, but the revolution has just begun.
We went and checked it out and said, oh yeah, this is just perfect. Civic auditorium, big auditorium for exhibits, a lot of meeting halls. Yeah, how much? Oh, $5,000 a day for each show day or something like that. I mean, thousands of dollars. Okay, thanks. We'll go and figure it out. God, is there any way we could afford to do this? And I started scribbling. Well, let's see. Here in Silicon Valley, we should be able to get at least 5,000 people. Hey, we could really rip them off and charge $7 or maybe even $8 or $9 or $10. And we should be able to have 150 exhibit spaces, maybe even 200. And we could charge them more. We could charge them $300 or $400. That number of exhibitors, estimated exhibitors, that number of dollars, multiply, add it up. And I looked up and said, wow. Hell, we might even make a little money off of it. What a deal. And that's how the computer fair was born.
That was incredibly exciting to me. It was kind of a gathering of the clans, all the nerdy people who were interested in computers. It was kind of like Woodstock or something like that.
The computer fair drew people from out of town, out of state. So it was really a carnival atmosphere and extremely productive, I would say. In a way, it's one of the events you get in an agora.
The hobbyists were exhilarated, and it validated them as a community. It said, we are real, the personal computer is a real thing, and it's going to be the future. The world was coming to what they had created.
And that happened to be where the Apple II was formally introduced. And I thought it was just sensational, and fell in love with it right away.
And this machine was a runaway. It was a breakout machine. What made the Apple II different from what came before is it wasn't a bare, naked piece of technology that only a nerd would love. It doesn't look like something that you'll have to get a screwdriver to open it up and fix it and make it work. So Steve Jobs, being the marketing genius that he was, he went to a guy to get money, $100,000, to make this beautiful case that you see here, because he knew that the home buyer wouldn't put an ugly steel box on their kitchen counter.
You know, people forget what Steve's big invention was. Steve Jobs came up with the notion that people, everyday people, could use computers. When I first met him in '79, I went to his house and we sat on the floor, and he wasn't very good at making decisions. But we did have some funny times. We went shopping a lot, Tried to buy a couch, no luck. It was difficult for him to pick a couch because he wanted the perfect couch, and he was willing to sit on the floor until he got it. And I used to think, that's ridiculous. And then I realized there's a certain majesty to that. It can be overdone, and he did overdo it. But there's a certain grandiosity there, isn't there?
I think the Japanese aesthetic was very attractive to him. And so he came to the practice motivated by the Japanese art forms. But as far as the spiritual practice is concerned, he wasn't interested. I think Steve tried to make it part of the design philosophy. In those early days, he made some comment. Look at the IBM personal computer. It's just this box. It's very boring. We could make it much more interesting and much more artistic, and he tried to do that with the Apple computers. And people would say, oh, look how beautiful.
Steve understood very well that there was a huge technology opportunity, and he wasn't like asking me to join him as a partner. He was paying me $3 an hour. That's what he paid me. It was minimum wage. So I was feeling poor. Most of the time, I was just sitting in the garage by myself, testing the circuit boards, and Steve was on the phone in the kitchen. That was what Apple was like. And when Steve would go out, then when the phone would ring, I would have to run into the kitchen and answer it. But I think at the time, Steve knew what was going on. Apple came to dominate many of the other companies for a variety of reasons. And then, of course, the spreadsheet came along.
I think the moment that the computer left the hobbyist realm was when our friends Dan Bricklin and Bob Frankston could do their Visicalc, could do their electronic spreadsheet. And when that came out, and into 1979, accountants would look at that, and they would see those numbers ripple and change. They could change one number and watch the whole thing.
Okay, Bob,
they would start crying.
He started shaking. He said, I spent all week doing that, and you did it in 15 minutes. My God.
Well, I think neither of us realized how big it was going to be at the beginning.
But from Visicalc, we did not make much money off of Visicalc. Those weren't the days when many people made a lot of money. The issue is, why didn't we patent Visicalc? Well, it's so obvious. We would have been really rich. Yes, we would have. But in those days, computer programs couldn't be patented. Only machines could be patented. So this at least is working. Okay. 18 months later, the Supreme Court in the United States changed the law. They basically said, oh, just because it's mathematics and programming doesn't mean it's unpatentable. Software patents of some sort are now allowed. If we had come out with Visicalc 18 months later, we would have patented, we would have had it in, and you'd be in our villa now with our, But this is version 2 of, look at, this is a really old version of it. It's 1981. It would have been wonderful to be rich, okay? To be able to give to charity, pay to eradicate malaria. I mean, this is incredible stuff. But here it is more than 35 years later, and you're flying over from overseas to interview me, okay? Those type of things are also something that money can't buy, and that is nice. So, the question is, what do you expect to get out of life? Money can help you get that in many cases. But there are other things that you can also get, and it's really nice to have people come up to you because they recognize me from whatever and say thank you, especially accountants. They bless me. I mean, it's like, it's kind of cool. What did Visicalc make possible? Being able to figure out the type of financial instruments that let people run closer to the edge and do really well. It made junk bonds possible. They now had a tool that let them experiment. That's the problem with any technology. It's a double-edged sword. When you're building tools, you want to make sure that it's useful for good, I hope, those of us that want to do that. But you realize that people will use them as they see fit. The fact that some of the things that made the 80s be the way they were, the tool of choice for some of the people would be the electronic spreadsheet.
Ironically, two idealists, the Visicalc inventors, had written a program that makes the PC an important tool for financial gamblers. And the timing fits. In the 1980s, the social climate in the USA is changing.
One of the things that was going on is that for most of the 80s, it was the Reagan administration. And conventional thinking was more in fashion.
With all those across the land who share a community of values embodied in these words: family, work, neighborhood, peace, and freedom.
I would characterize the 80s as what happened when these ideas that emerged from a couple of laboratories and a group of hobbyists spread out for the entire society. So the 80s was about the growth of a huge industry. John Doerr, the venture capitalist, called it the largest legal accumulation of capital in history. And that's what happened during the 1980s, is that this new industry touched just every part of American society, from homes to schools to businesses.
It was go, 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 make America great again, we're the best, military, business being the priority. So everybody in the 80s sort of copied that. And so it was a gigantic, booming industry in the 80s. You still found the tie-dye engineer in the back that's coding the operating system, but it was all business people up front.
After I bought my Apple II, of course, as a programmer, I started writing programs for it, and I'd give away the programs at the club. That was very exciting because I sort of had an audience for my programs. I could write a program and other people could be excited about it. But I had a friend who kind of said, oh no, don't give that away. You could sell it and make tens of thousands of dollars. And I had no idea how to do something like that. But he said, oh, don't worry, you write the program, I'll find the market for it, we'll split the money. And so that sounded interesting enough. Unfortunately, the people who wanted to be rich were a little more numerous than the people who were doing it out of love.
So when Apple went public, 1980, there were 100 millionaires, and I literally knew all of them. But then I was never going to get a stock option, which was very difficult for me. It was difficult for me, having been the first employee working in the garage. I was very frustrated and depressed for quite a while. Apple Computer didn't really owe me anything, but everybody knew I was a good employee and working hard and motivated, and everybody liked me, and I was really helpful. So they just assumed that Steve would take care of me, and he had no such thought. I have a theory now. I think there was a woman involved. There was a woman that I would have, that Steve was dating, and then he definitely told me he was not interested. So I called her up. And nothing happened, but I did call her up. I went to visit her in Chicago. And then it occurred to me one day, just this year, I thought, wait a minute. Who knows what she told Steve? She could have easily told him something that would make him really infuriated at me. Mysteries of human psychology. Hard to, I don't know. You could say he was a narcissist. So many factors in Steve's life. That's why there's so many books about him.
While Steve Jobs is working on the next Apple computer, a message from the East Coast shocks the pioneers in Silicon Valley. In the spring of 1981, IBM, the hated corporation with its anonymous large mainframe computers, is bringing their own personal computer to the market.
The industry didn't grow slowly, it grew spectacularly quickly. From 75, it took only 6 years for IBM to realize it needed to be in this industry, personal computer industry.
They realized, oh, something's happening here. We got to get in on this. This is now in business. In the spring of 1981, I remember watching the NBC News broadcast. And what the broadcast showed were these boxes coming off an assembly line with IBM on them. And I remember looking at that and thinking, oh my God, this is the beginning of personal computers as a big thing, because all those buyers in those big companies will say, if it has IBM on it, I'll buy it. This is the IBM personal computer, launched in April of 1981. It had been a secret project. Nobody knew about it. When it came out, it hit Silicon Valley like an earthquake. It shook Silicon Valley to its core because Big Blue was here. The largest computer company on the planet had entered the market formerly of hobbyists and little local companies. And everybody sensed that this was going to change their whole future. And this machine shaped the 80s.
There's a famous, the response to the IBM PC introduction from Apple. Apple took out a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal that said, "Welcome, IBM, seriously," or something, kind of thinking that, well, it validates personal computers. Apple had a better product, and IBM diving in would make corporations more interested in buying the computer. So Apple kind of initially saw it as not such a bad thing.
At the Homebrew Club, we began an examination. I was one of the two people up front doing that. When we finally opened up one of their computers at a meeting, we realized IBM is doing something completely different now. They're doing things our ways. They're using commercial off-the-shelf components, and they published their code in the manual right there for us to see. IBM saved themselves, really, by adopting our philosophy.
One part of the story was that IBM had put its stamp on it, but it had used the parts from other companies. So Bill Gates, being the incredible business strategy guy that he is, jumped on the opportunity to get his operating system onto this computer. But it wasn't even his operating system. It was something written by Tim Patterson.
Bill Gates went to him and said, hey, we'd like to buy this to become a Microsoft product. Not saying anything at all about IBM, of course.
And the thing is, knowing it was IBM didn't mean much. I had no idea that it was going to turn out to be a success. I didn't understand the marketing forces that IBM had to turn it into something like they did. I did my job. I got paid for it. It doesn't bother me that I'm not well known. I am very proud of the accomplishment of having written a program that became, long after I wrote it, the most widely used computer program in the world for at least a decade. So that's, yeah, I'm proud of that. I don't begrudge that Microsoft is the one to make all the money on it, because they're the ones who got it there.
Bill Gates was a canny businessman because he basically said to IBM, I've got you over a barrel. You don't have an operating system. I have an operating system. But you must agree in my contract that you don't have exclusive rights to my DOS. I can sell it to other people. And that little clause in the contract by a very smart Bill Gates led to him becoming the richest man in the world.
You know, Bill is a force of nature from a personality perspective. I think he understood how to work in the big leagues from the very beginning. And so the IBM deal, I mean, I think in many ways it put Microsoft on the map. Sometimes whole industries turn on one meeting taking place or not taking place, and that was a seminal moment for Microsoft.
I think IBM accepted the deal to license rather than purchase the operating system from Bill Gates because they didn't understand what was happening. They did not understand the force that was going on. They did not realize that consumer computing would come to dominate business computing. But Gates had this very firm belief that there was going to be a personal computer in every household.
Microsoft becomes a global software giant thanks to its MS-DOS. Bill Gates establishes his company in Seattle. But Silicon Valley remains the leading center for innovation. Even traditional companies, such as the copier manufacturer Xerox, opens a computer research department here. A new corporate culture is emerging.
The conference rooms had bean bags like this. People could sit and relax in the bean bag and listen to somebody speak.
Silicon Valley was the place where so many people wanted to be at the time. And the whole concept of living without an oppressive organizational structure over you was very attractive. Xerox Corporation established their research center here, their Palo Alto Research Center, and of course that really developed the personal computer as it turned out.
The computer culture that grew up at Xerox PARC was a peculiarly West Coast culture. That kind of research style, which is now typical of Silicon Valley, started at Xerox PARC.
Every day was an adventure. I lived in biking distance of here, and whatever idea I had, I could pursue. When I came back from my experiments with social, communal living in the country, I wanted to do something different. I had a vision of things being simple to use, that anybody could use. I realized that computers were much more complicated than necessary. You should get simplicity. And I thought you should only have to spend a few minutes to learn to use the computer system. The Alto was our vision of what the future of computing was going to be. It was reflected as well as we possibly could technically in the Alto.
Larry Tesler and his colleagues are developing a computer that is far ahead of its time. The first PC with a mouse, the first PC with a graphical interface. But as usual, others are making the big money. Apple founder Steve Jobs is, to put it diplomatically, inspired by the Alto computer.
And here we have the Alto from Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. And this was the machine that birthed everything. This was the machine that people first saw the mouse on, running windows and icons on the screen, making documents, composing music, and running games, all in the way we do it today. So people would come in and out of the research lab, see this, and one of those guys that came to Xerox PARC to see the Alto was Steve Jobs.
I was one of about 4 people who gave demos to Steve Jobs. When it was my turn to demo, he couldn't hold it in. He was exploding.
You could go click on that and select it and open a document, and then you could go type something, and that was completely revolutionary from the world of the Apple II.
He said things like, I don't understand. You're sitting on a gold mine. Why isn't this in the market? Why aren't you selling these? And we tried to explain that this was economically not feasible right now as a product. It was research for the future.
He could not believe that they weren't commercializing it. You know, because that was Steve's personality. It's like, oh my God, great technology, let's sell it. That's what he did with the Blue Box, and that's what he did with the Apple I and the Apple II.
He realized that was the machine that was going to change the world, but it wasn't going to be made by Xerox. His idea was, we can do it better. We can package what the Alto has in the Macintosh, and we can sell it to everybody.
The Macintosh was not bigger than everything else. The screen wasn't bigger. It wasn't as big as the Alto. It was, however, the defining product for a new generation of personal computers.
This was a tremendous blast for the scene. People who were used to sitting in front of machines, typing in a command to list files and doing this and that and seeing text, suddenly we're seeing pictures. When you wrote just a simple letter to your mom, it looked the same way on the screen as it would print out.
It was literally a life-changing experience. The idea that you could commit these words into a medium and then have the fluidity to move them around, get rid of things, add things, change things, do multiple drafts, it was literally life-changing. Like, I get excited even talking about it now. And so for me, the idea that a personal computer could bring that to everyone was terribly, terribly exciting.
The introduction, of course, was a cultural dividing point. That's where, with the famous Ridley Scott commercial.
The theme of that commercial was that IBM was a bureaucratic company with legions of droids.
They presented IBM as Big Brother.
Mindless zombies sitting there in their chairs absorbing the speech from Big Brother, and it's all very rigid and very conformist and very boring.
And suddenly this woman, a cute woman in shorts and a stretch shirt, comes in wielding a hammer and throws it up and destroys the screen of the boss who was telling everybody what to do.
So Apple was the force of liberation. IBM was the force of oppression.
It was an astounding thing, and it was a beautiful piece of positioning, masterful.
To underline the revolutionary image of his computer, Apple CEO Steve Jobs uses an icon of counterculture.
Steve Jobs began the Macintosh introduction, the very first thing was he recited the second verse of The Times They Are A-Changing. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen and keep your eyes wide. The chance won't come again, but don't speak too soon because the wheel's still in spin and there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will be later to win. The times they are a-changing. It's the second verse, The Times They Are A-Changing, and it had to do with I think the key line there was the loser now will be later to win, because Apple was having a bit of a hard time, as IBM was sort of taking over the industry.
The message was, IBM, that's old stuff. We've got something really radical new for you.
Breaking down boundaries that had kept you from being able to use this stuff usefully, even if you weren't a technical person.
It was a true sandbox for the mind, so the imagination could take flight.
And all of a sudden, there was this sense that a computer had been created for someone like me, by a company that was run by people like me, who not only understood who I was and what I might want to do with computers, but who respected that, who actually respected an artist, a writer, a musician, and who wanted to give me not just a tool, but a collaborator that I could use to realize my visions and share them with the larger world. That was a revolution.
The computer, as we know it today, is here. And the next revolution is already happening. On the threshold of the new decade, boundaries are falling. Ronald Reagan and the Soviet President Gorbachev end the Cold War. In 1989, the Berlin Wall is falling.
The 90s was this grand opening. It was the full promise of personal computing.
The small boxes from Silicon Valley are turned into a window to the world. The American military had long been working on a global computer network. But in 1990, the internet becomes mass compatible. An English computer scientist in Switzerland has the idea of designing networks in such a way that everyone can use them easily. The World Wide Web is created and changes our lives.
Suddenly the entire world was connected. The Soviet Union fell. So our former enemy was now connected on the same network, and everybody had PCs.
Everyone I know has been affected by the internet and the web, and it's just a tremendous, tremendous thing. Almost incomparable advance in human history to connect the world.
I'm friends with people in England. I'm friends with people in France. I wouldn't know them if I met them on the street, but we have conversations all the time. And yeah, you used to be able to do that by the US mail, but it was a lot slower.
Bucks became sort of a place to anoint your firm, where the money meets the entrepreneur. So back in the 90s, we saw certainly Netscape was pivotal. Hotmail was founded here, sold for $400 million back when that was a lot of money. Now if you sell it for $400 million, people go, oh, well, maybe next time you'll do better. And more contemporarily, PayPal was funded here. Tesla was founded here at Bucks. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of firms had their early meetings here. It just became a thing to do. And then it's just snowballs. And then all of a sudden, I get in the movie. Crazy, huh?
Some protagonists of the PC revolution find new jobs in the world of the internet. Others become observers. Even Bill Gates initially underestimates the internet. It is not until later that he develops a browser, which he aggressively brings onto the market with the help of Microsoft's near monopoly. It is a new generation of computer freaks that have leverage now. Two Stanford graduates, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, invent a search engine in 1998, Google. In the tradition of the early nerds from the Homebrew Computer Club, they give their company the motto, "Do not be evil."
Well, Google is interesting because here you have two students and they kind of looked at the state of search engines, Yahoo and things like this, and they said, this is such crap. You go to Yahoo, you put in a search term, and you have to wait all this time because this is still in the modem days. Most people just had modems. You have to wait all this crap is painting, ads and stuff like that on screen before I get my results, and the results aren't very good. So let's make something elegant and simple. There's no ads. It just says Google. You put it in, and the search engine's really good, really fast performing, and bingo, they hit it. You know, permission to steal, but make better. And so their ethos at the time, again, it was a bit of a hippie ethos. Don't be evil.
I'm not sure that Google's don't be evil is as much a hippie thing as a hacker thing. There's white hat hackers and black hat hackers. And the white hat hackers are very much on don't be evil. So I think Google's don't be evil had some countercultural origins because that was part of the air people breathed. But I wouldn't I wouldn't put a lot of weight on a direct connection.
I was in the garage when that company first started, and they really did want to be different. I mean, they had a set of values they wanted to adhere to. But as they became a company that threw off literally $1 billion in cash a week, if you can imagine such a thing, it really profoundly changed their view. And within the last year, they actually dropped the "Don't be evil" as a slogan. They're one of the most powerful companies in the world.
It is a fantastic new world, and it is a brave new world. I can see a lot of dangers in it, and we're certainly seeing any number of those. I can see a lot of benefits from it.
And then 9/11 happened, and then basically the old guard, that old Cold War guard, came back. And so it's a challenge to keep an open society versus a fear-based closed society. And Edward Snowden is sort of the avatar for this, saying your rights have already been taken away. Rights that were guaranteed you have been taken away in terms of the surveillance of your communications. You have a right to demand them back.
George Orwell could never have imagined such a completely powerful surveillance tool that the internet has become. They watch every movement you make, every breath you take is recorded, which is sad, And people make this trade-off. I mean, that's the amazing thing is that, for free stuff, we'll give away all of our private information. That's the way it is.
Some stuff, there's some beer down there.
The private is increasingly becoming public. The business model of Mark Zuckerberg is based on this idea.
We didn't want cubicles, so we got IKEA kitchen tables instead.
In 2004, the 20-year-old psychology and computer science student founds a company called Facebook. Approximately 1.6 billion people will later use the social network. What began with the free speech movement in Berkeley and in the garages of the Silicon Valley is today a global network. Technological democratization and fantastic new opportunities abound. However,
right now we have this illusion that we have a tremendously free society and anybody can do anything. You could say one or two more 9/11s and we might have a very different kind of society. And then the stuff that we're posting might, be used to control a society. So something that could seem banal in a liberal democracy, Facebook, could be terrifying in a dictatorship where behavior was more controlled. It's deeply ironic that what started as a very utopian and libertarian movement can now be a force for surveillance and control all over the world, which it is.
I can't say that I'm happy with the way things have gone technologically and even socially with social media. I find myself being entranced by Facebook, for instance. Always, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next? I'm a spectator at a show. I'm not a participant. The entire purpose of our social media efforts was to get people to meet each other. Talking face-to-face has no current equivalent in electronic media. And we can see that because the way people behave behind the screen anonymously is quite different from the way anyone would behave in direct conversation and discussion.
Sometimes I go to dinner with my brother and his nieces and nephews, and they spend the entire time at dinner like this, and I'm trying to talk to them, and I think, but on the other hand, they're connecting with 16 of their friends at the same time and sharing their whole lives. So I'm not sure that it's doing them any harm. They may be growing new neuronal connections. I know for me, it's becoming increasingly important to remember to walk outside and let beauty, the actual beauty of the world, wash into me and take me over. Now, when I met Bruce, I was saying the same thing to Bruce. Look, both of us need to put our feet in the ground. We literally need to have a garden and have our hands in the dirt because we need contact with reality, with nature. This is critically important. And it was really then that we came here and started working in the garden.
They have shaped the computer revolution. Today, a new generation is writing engineering history.
Oh, happy memories. This was, this is like honest labor that was fun, and I didn't get wealthy doing this, but, and I'm, I don't know. These things are worth money someday, but that's not. I took them because they were in boxes in my office at Apple, and I guess they would have gone in a dumpster, right? I'll show you this t-shirt because it's funny. This was my birthday, and because of my story about not having a stock option from Apple, my friends made this t-shirt. On the front it says, I was building computers in the Apple garage. On the back it says, and all I got was this t-shirt, which is very funny.
I've been retired for quite a while, and I'm working here in my own workspace doing this thing, and I've recently decided I'd really like to join a group environment, work with people, have a task that's going to be, maybe turn into a product and be used by lots. And I've applied for some jobs, and I'm not, maybe they think I'm too old, but I'm not getting calls back. So I'm feeling a little underappreciated, I guess.
People have to remain in control of the technology they use. That's a fundamental principle that I've been applying. We have to gain direct experience with it because we cannot turn it over to artificial intelligences or companies in China. So I've been designing some equipment that will allow kids from 11 up to gain an understanding that is visual and tactile of bit operations of Boolean logic.
find that the younger generation is really worried about survival. They're interested in getting a job. They don't have the luxury. And we had great luxury to sit around and dream, and I want to do that. I'm going to be the greatest singer in the whole world, and I'm going to be the greatest painter. And we shared those dreams with each other. But a lot of the younger generations don't respond when someone of my generation talks about a wild idea.
Back then, the establishment in the computer industry was represented by IBM. Today, the establishment is Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Oracle. They're the ones that have billions of customers. But it's true that what I helped to create is today's establishment. That's what I was trying to get rid of, an establishment.
Some idols of counterculture change sides.
I saw the commercial where Bob Dylan is being a key figure in an IBM commercial. I think he was just looking for big bucks, and they probably paid a lot of money to him. I find it really bizarre that in the 1980s, Steve Jobs has quoted Bob Dylan when he introduced the Macintosh, and now Bob Dylan is older, more wrinkled, and shilling for IBM. It's a disappointment.
I think that's still true. It's still very, very possible for someone in their bedroom or garage to write a program and start a company and make a real difference in the world. And so, of course, the big companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, aren't centers of rebellion anymore. They are the establishment. When you're big, you have lots of advantages, but you also have some disadvantages. If you have some business model making you rich, you sort of don't want to mess with it as much. And so to see the next thing to happen is easier if you're starting from scratch.
I think that the spirit of innovation is more alive now than ever.
I think there's still a lot left to those early ideals. Can I solve this biological problem? Can I solve this genetic problem? Can I solve this artificial intelligence problem? Wow, these are neat things. This is fun to work on. This is fulfilling. This is satisfying.
It is a big industry. I think last year there were $55 billion in venture invested in the United States. So when you just understand the magnitude of that amount of capital trying to disrupt and change things, it's really a remarkable thing. So on the one hand, I think the money's a great thing. On the other hand, I think that sometimes there's too much money in the system. And I think what people forget is the day you take someone else's money, you have made a commitment to return that money to them. So think very carefully about that money, because that money is a commitment and a partnership. It's easier to get divorced than it is to get rid of your venture capitalists.
There's probably an order of magnitude more startups today than there were in the 80s. And yeah, they fail at a great rate. And yeah, some of them are stupid, but some of them are going to completely change the world, and we don't know which one is which. The important thing is to keep a climate where they can exist and prosper.
I think what the hippie to homebrew revolution did was permanently install the idea that you needed free-thinking people somewhere in your ranks to do something, and that they're highly valued, so they'll go to somebody else if you don't use them, but you need to have some of that. And they're not just weirdos, so the weird is okay.
It's not that important what you wear or how you look. It's what's going on inside your head, not what's going on outside your head, that really matters here. And I think that is still true today. I mean, I still think if, there is another joke about Silicon Valley is if you want to know who the most important person in the room is, it's the most poorly dressed person in the room.
West Coast revolution, starting with the music scene, the art scene, if you will, the drug scene in the 60s, but the opening of liberation movements for women, for people of color, the eco movement, those all fed into the personal computer revolution, which then powered them. So the revolution of small computers became a revolution for every human being on the planet holding a smartphone or being somehow connected. This West Coast revolution is the revolution for the next 500 years, and it started on these shores, and like a tide, it just rolled out again and again and again across the planet.